In Asgard, the golden realm of the gods, peace was constant, but that would change with the return of Loki. After years of being away, Loki arrives bearing gifts and a charming smile, but his presence soon reveals his true nature. He seeks more than harmony. He desires chaos. During a welcoming banquet in the Hall of Valhalla, Loki moves among the gods, eavesdropping on conversations and making subtle comments that sow doubt. He insinuates that Odin, though wise, may be losing his strength, and that perhaps Thor, despite his courage, relies too much on his brute strength. With his sharp tongue, Loki turns casual conversations into dangerous intrigues, leaving those present uneasy. Days later, at the Great Council of the Gods, Loki seizes the opportunity to deepen the discord. He questions why Freya, the goddess of beauty, is given so many privileges and insinuates that his position among the gods is less earned than earned by personal favors. The gods begin to argue among themselves, and Thor, enraged, demands that Loki cease his provocations. Loki merely smiles, pleased to see Asgard's alliances begin to weaken. Not satisfied, Loki begins to act directly against Thor. He finds Sif, the thunder god's wife, and, feigning kindness, listens to her complain about Thor's lack of attention. That same night, Loki cuts Sif's golden hair while she sleeps. When Thor finds out, the palace is filled with his fury. Loki, with his skill at manipulation, defends himself by saying that it was only a joke and promises to make up for his mistake. He suggests that the dwarves, master blacksmiths, can forge new hair for Sif, even more beautiful than the previous one. Although Loki's promise temporarily pacifies Thor, the damage is already done. The trust between the gods is shaken, and the doubts that were sown begin to take root. Meanwhile, Odin watches from his throne, realizing that Loki is not just an external threat, but a danger that has crept into the heart of Asgard. As night falls, Loki walks alone through the gardens, surveying the towers of Asgard. With an enigmatic smile, he mutters to himself, "This is only the beginning. To bring down a kingdom, all you have to do is make it fight against itself." Loki, the master of trickery, watches Asgard with a look of dissatisfaction. The peace that reigned among the gods infuriates him. His envy of Baldur, the god of light and beauty, grows with each passing day. Baldur is adored by all, a god who radiates goodness and joy. But to Loki, his perfection is a constant reminder of his own failure. The adoration that Baldur receives from the other gods is something that Loki cannot bear. Loki's plan to destroy Baldur begins to take shape in his mind. He had heard of a prophecy that said Baldur would be immortal, invulnerable to any attack. The gods had sworn an oath not to harm Baldur, making him virtually unbeatable. But there was a loophole, a weakness, hidden behind Baldur's safety: mistletoe. The prophecy had never mentioned that mistletoe could be a threat, and that was what Loki decided to use. Cunningly, Loki approached Hoder, Baldur's blind brother. Taking advantage of Hoder's kindness, Loki suggested that he participate in the festivities in honor of Baldur, where the gods played, throwing arrows and other weapons at Baldur without causing him harm. He then manipulated Hoder, convincing him to shoot an arrow at Baldur. Loki, disguised as a friend, offered the arrow made of mistletoe, a material that was not included in the god's oath. When Hoder shot the arrow, tragedy struck. The arrow struck Baldur in the chest, and Asgard's most beloved god fell dead, his blood staining the Asgard soil. Panic quickly spread throughout the realm. The gods, stunned, could not believe what had happened. Frigg, Baldur's mother, was the first to suffer the loss, her heart broken by the death of her son. She begged Odin to do everything he could to bring Baldur back from the dead, convincing him to seek a solution, no matter the cost. Loki watched everything from afar, his satisfaction hidden behind an impassive expression. However, deep inside he felt a certain emptiness. Baldur's death, although satisfying in terms of revenge, did not fill the hole he felt in his heart. But, as always, Loki preferred to hide behind his tricks and games. The gods, in an act of desperation, decided to look for a way to bring Baldur back. Frigg, Baldur's mother, went to the goddess Hel, ruler of the realm of the dead, asking her to release her son. Hel agreed, but on one condition: all living beings must mourn for Baldur. If even the most insignificant creature did not mourn, Baldur would remain dead. The gods sent messengers throughout the realms to call for mourning, but Loki once again acted in the shadows. In disguise, he disguised himself as a giantess and went to meet Frigg, who refused. After Baldur's death, the mourning in Asgard was profound and the grief of all the gods took hold. Frigg, Baldur's mother, could not accept the loss of her son and, in desperation, sought a solution. She went to Odin, her husband, who was also devastated by Baldur's death. Together they decided to find a way to bring Baldur back to life, even knowing the complications involved. Frigg went to the realm of the dead, ruled by the goddess Hel, daughter of Loki. There she begged for their help, imploring Hel to free her son Baldur, allowing him to return to Asgard. Hel, after reflection, accepted the proposal but made one demand: all living beings from all creatures and kingdoms must mourn for Baldur. If anyone refused to mourn, Baldur would remain dead. The gods then sent messengers to the 9 realms, requesting that everyone join in mourning for Baldur. Creatures and beings of all kinds were summoned, in the hope that the amount of tears would be enough for Baldur to return to life. But Loki, always seeking chaos, had other plans. Learning of Hel's agreement, Loki decided to interfere once again. Disguised as a giantess, he hid among those who were crying for Baldur, feigning grief over the death of their beloved god. When it was his turn to express his grief, Loki refused to cry. Baldur was no better than any other god, he said disdainfully, and remained impassive in the face of everyone's grief. Loki's refusal, as expected, prevented the fulfillment of Hel's condition. No solution could be found, and Baldur remained in the realm of the dead, with no hope of returning. When the gods discovered what had happened, their anger turned against Frigg, who had trusted Loki's words. But she, consumed by grief, did not accuse anyone, still believing that Loki was not responsible for her refusal. As Asgard grieved for his loss, Loki continued to watch from afar, his face hidden in a subtle smile. He took pleasure in the suffering he had caused, but deep down, what he truly wanted was not just to destroy Baldur, but to weaken the very foundations of the gods. He knew that a darker threat lay ahead, and his true intention was to pave the way for what would be the end of all. And so, as the reign of Asgard began to crumble under the weight of grief and distrust, Loki stepped back from the shadows, victorious once more, but still unsatisfied with the destruction he had wrought. Time passed, and with it the tragedy of Baldur's death continued to haunt Asgard. The land of the gods was plunged into a deep sadness, as if a shadow had fallen over the hearts of the immortals. The winds of fate began to blow stronger, and on the horizon the inevitable was about to happen. The prophecy of Ragnarok, the end of times, which had always been a distant threat, now seemed imminent. Loki, imprisoned by the gods as punishment for his crimes, had been imprisoned in a dark cave, with venomous snakes dripping their venom on him eternally. His punishment was a reflection of his treacherous actions, but Loki, as always, knew that the pain would be temporary and that an opportunity to escape would arise. In the meantime, he fed his mind with thoughts of revenge. planning how he could turn the fate of the gods into something even more tragic. The prophecy of Ragnarok spoke of the destruction of Asgard and the fall of the gods, and no one knew for sure how it would happen. But as the winds of war began to gather, the gods began to realize that something much greater was coming. Loki himself, once again, would be the key to the end. Loki, freed by his monstrous sons, Fenrir the giant wolf, and Jörmungandr the world serpent, was ready to bring chaos. He gathered an army of giants, dark creatures, and shadowy beings from all realms, forging an alliance with the forces of evil. War was approaching, and Asgard began to tremble under the weight of the imminent threat. Ragnarok began when the heavens opened and Loki's forces attacked with fury. Fenrir, the colossal wolf, tore through the sky, and Jörmungandr emerged from the depths, his body snaking through the sea, destroying everything in its path. The forces of the gods, though mighty, were divided, unable to withstand the onslaught of the forces Loki had summoned. The battle was brutal. The gods of Asgard, with their legendary powers, faced giants, wolves, and other creatures of darkness. Thor, the god of thunder, wielded Mjolnir in fury, felling giants, while Odin led the gods in a desperate attempt to protect Asgard. But the battle was beyond hope. The fate of the gods was sealed. On the battlefield, Loki finally came face to face with Odin, the All-Father. The tension between the two was palpable, the anger and hatred built up over centuries of betrayal and manipulation. Loki, with a cruel smile, challenged Odin, mocking his authority and power. They fought, their powers clashing with the force of thunder and storm, but in the end, Loki succumbed to the fate he had helped create. Odin himself was defeated by Fenrir, and Thor, in a final act of bravery, fought a deadly battle with Jörmungandr. But as the prophecy foretold, Thor too fell, slain by the serpent he had sworn to defeat. Asgard was destroyed, and the balance between the worlds was disrupted. The War of Ragnarok devastated all 9 realms. In the end, Loki, as promised, met his fate. He died at the hands of one of his own sons, Fenrir, the wolf he had freed, fulfilling the prophecy that he would bring about the end of all things. But even in death, his influence remained. The cycle of destruction he had begun could not be undone, and the fallen gods became legends of a lost time. And so, Ragnarok consumed the 9 worlds. The end of time brought not only the death of the gods, but also the rebirth of all things, as the prophecy foretold. The cycle of life and death ran its course, and a new world began to rise from the ashes of destruction. But deep within, the mark of Loki, the trickster god, would continue to haunt all the realms, a reminder that chaos and treachery never cease,